Good morning and welcome to the Architectural Review Board meeting of November 7th, 2013. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Chair Liebert.
Okay.
Vice Chair Pop. Board Member Liu.
Present.
Board Member Malone Pritchard.
Present.
Board Member Guyer.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, 4 present. With that, we'll have oral communication. Members of the public may speak to any item not on the agenda. Is there any members of the public that wish to speak? Could you come up to the dais there, and you'll have 3 minutes, and if you would fill out a speaker card. Speak first and then fill out the card.
Oh, you want me to speak right now? Oh, I didn't know I was jumping on the board that quickly. I'm concerned about...
Can you state your name for the record?
I'm Elizabeth Moon, longtime resident of Palo Alto, lover of Palo Alto, but particularly concerned about these giant buildings that are going up that are creating shadows wherever you go. I mean, the sunlight it's starting to feel like San Francisco. I love San Francisco, but I never go there. It's tedious to drive through, you never see the sun, and it's starting to feel like Palo Alto is becoming that. It started with Cheesecake Factory, which looked like a building that would be much better presented in New York City, not in Palo Alto. And as we add more and more of these buildings along the university, the sun goes away, the commute through and enticement into downtown Palo Alto is much less available to us. I feel like we're starting to create a tunnel, a wind tunnel down University. So you get off 101 and you get blown right into University, or you leave the university and get blown to 101. It's just becoming this tall tunnel of giant buildings that we really can't handle well. For example, this particular building, because that's what we're here about, is on the corner of University and Kipling. Kipling's a tiny little street with parking on both sides, and it's very hard to navigate in and through there. And it's partially residential, partially business, and so it's got a mixed character, which is barely manageable now. This new building isn't offering enough parking, so we're going to have additional parking problems there, and I can't imagine that they're going to have entering into the parking on University, which would suggest it's going to be on Kipling, which is going to make that much more complex. The only way I see that could be resolved is to take away parking on one side or the other of Kipling, which means we lose even more parking. So the parking, the wind tunnel, the fact that it's just, again, taking away the character of Palo Alto to build something that is, I could suggest that the architects that are working in Palo Alto these days don't have an awful lot of aesthetic taste, because I look at these things like the Alma Village that's packed right up against Alma, turning Alma into an alleyway feel rather than a residential area, which it is predominantly. So I'm extremely concerned about this building. I don't think that what it offers Palo Alto is all that beneficial. I'm sure that the owner is going to get great benefit out of it, but I think the variance is going to benefit the owner at the cost of every resident of Palo Alto. I know so many people who won't shop in downtown Palo Alto because it's hard to navigate now, and the parking is so bad. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, any other members of the public wishing to speak on any item not on the agenda? Okay, with that, we'll move on to approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes, October 17th. Any changes or revisions? Can I get a motion?
Actually, I had one comment.
Okay.
On item number 4, which was 636 Waverly Street. The action is stated that the concrete sample should be reviewed by members of the subcommittee on site, and that the raised planter at the curb be included. I believe the motion was only to review the concrete sample on site, and the discussion of the raised planter was just to send information to Public Works that we preferred the raised planter.
Okay.
but it wasn't a condition of the approval.
Yeah. I believe that that's what the minutes should state. So if you'll amend the minutes accordingly. Any other changes or revisions?
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Four present, one absent. Okay. With that, we will move on to agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Russ, do we have any?
No changes.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the consent calendar, which is 3445 Alma Street, request by MCG Architecture on behalf of Alma Trestle LLC for architectural review, including a sign exception of the installation of 2 projecting signs on a 50,500 square foot 2-story mixed-use building at Alma Village Development, Zone District PC 4556, environmental assessment, exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act. And just with that, I'd like to say that I, for the record, met with the applicant.
I also met with the applicant last week to discuss the 3 options presented today.
Okay.
And I also met with the applicant to discuss the 3 options.
Okay. Does anybody wish to pull this from the consent calendar? Alex?
Yes.
Okay. If staff would like to introduce the item, please.
Thank you, Chair and board members. Per the board's direction, the applicant has revised the option for the projecting signs and provided 3 options to address those concerns. Basically, the projecting sign was redesigned to incorporate a belly similar to the original Alma Village banner. The first would be to include 1 blade sign and 1 wall sign on the Alma frontage. The second would be to propose 2 blade signs, incorporating the belly. And the third option would combine the first and second options, which would be 2 blade signs and 1 wall sign. The wall sign was added to provide visual interest on Alma elevation similar to the existing Mickey's wall sign. Staff and the property owner prefer the first option because it provides signage required by the tenant, breaks up the facade, and would only require 1 exception for 1 sign. However, staff requests the board's feedback and recommends the board recommend that the director approve 1 of the 3 options. At Places this morning, provided is a memo from the Assistant Director, Aaron Acton, regarding the status of the window images as requested by the ARB at the last hearing. The applicant is also here to speak if needed. This concludes staff's report.
Okay. If the applicant would like to make their presentation, I will give you 10 minutes, but if you don't need it, please make your comments brief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I probably won't need more than a minute. Ms. Pritchard, gentlemen, I was at a week-long conference in Chicago this week. I came home late last night because this is a very important hearing. And it's important not only for Grocery Outlet and ourselves, but for the city of Palo Alto. As you all know, in our town of 60,000 people, we have 6,500 residents on Social Security, and we have over 2,000 official low-income units. We have no affordable groceries within 20 minutes in either direction. Grocery Outlet is going to solve that pressing social problem for us, but it can neither open nor succeed at Alma Village without the signage that it needs. What we need today is a decision that enables Grocery Outlet to go forward. Like Ms. Lee said, we much prefer option number 1. With the addition of the wall sign saying Alma Village, that would give us 3 signs, including the 2 on the street, with place identification. We don't think a 4th place identifier is necessary. What we need are Grocery Outlet signs approved in the height, the shape, the coloring, the lettering. Any of the 3 options, as long as that is included, will work for us, but we really need this to go forward. And finally, I would just like to point out that Grocery Outlet's 3 signs are actually smaller than what's approved and what's on the building today. They're in the same location, and they're made of identical materials with just the 1 exception. The only change that we're requesting today is absolutely minuscule, and it's actually for the better. Rather than a canvas sign, which would be externally lit, we are proposing a much more expensive, higher quality internally lit cabinet sign. That's it. Eric Parker is here to answer any technical questions. I'm here to answer any larger social issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McNullis. This is the time when members of the public may speak to this item. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and return to the board for comments and questions. Alex, would you like to begin?
So I just had some detailed comments for staff. The option number 1, just the drawings themselves are missing some of the details that are in options 2 and 3, and so that's for the projecting blade sign. So I think that those should be amended to the drawings if we do go with option 1. Also, in the last packet that we received on this at the last meeting, there was some structural drawings, and there was also information in that drawing that is not included in this packet today, and that has like the depth of the blade sign. So there are other details that should be incorporated into this one if we go this route. And then also too, as I was looking at the grocery outlet sign in Redwood City, and there are wall signs. Typically, the one that I saw had like white sides to the cabinet box, and I think that they're not called out on this. They may not be called out on this one. I didn't see any colors, and I understand like the wall signs are part of the. Right. I mean, I think the wall signs really aren't part of our review technically today. It's because we're just looking at the exception. I mean, this is for background information. Is that correct?
If I may, so basically the wall signs are proposed that were shown, other than the wall sign on Alma Village, would be approved as part of the staff level review. But the wall sign that we're showing today is proposed to compensate for the project. So it's sort of one package this time.
And then, so I think that I'm in favor of option 1. It seems like the addition of a second blade sign to me seems complicated for me. When there are utilities that cross over the sidewalk that seem to encroach into the area where a second blade sign would be, where the second blade sign is proposed. And then also too is that the blade signs that I really like, ideally, like the Cardinal Hotel, or there's also a CVS on California Drive near Castor Street in Mountain View. And the ones that I like are actually, they're red, but they're right on the corner. They sort of mark the corner. And I know this one isn't exactly on the corner, but I think to me the emphasis should be placed on getting people to turn the corner and to go into the shopping center. Because to me, that's the weakness of this particular site, since the parking is in back of the building. And I think that primary focus should be on the tenant and not necessarily the Alma Village. I mean, it seems like we have issues with getting people and foot traffic in there. And I think that's sort of more important than trying to highlight that there's like houses and stuff in the back of there. And I think that's all that I have here. Thanks.
Board Member Guyer?
I don't really have anything at this point. I'm fine with it.
There are 3 options.
Yeah, there are 3 options.
The option, I can go for 1. That's fine.
Okay. Board Member Malone-Pritchard?
I am in support of option 1. I think it is exactly as Alex said. The blade sign has more impact when there is one of them and it is in the right location. So I'm prepared to support that.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I would move we approve option 1, subject to the conditions of approval and our standard findings, and with the inclusion of all of the detailed sign information from previous packets.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll
Second.
Board Member Guyer. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Opposed. And we have one board member absent. So that passes 3-1-1. Great. Thank you, John. Okay, with that, we'll move on to minor review, 301 High Street, request by Hayes Group Architects on behalf of California Skin Institute for a minor architectural review to allow exterior modifications to a 200 square foot addition to an existing 6,255 square foot commercial building and grandfathered facility. The request includes a design enhancement exception to allow a 14-foot encroachment into the side yard daylight plane for a new rooftop equipment enclosure, zone district, commercial, downtown, neighborhood, and pedestrian combining district, environmental assessment exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act. Would staff like to introduce the project?
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. Staff is returning this proposal for a minor addition and facade remodel of an existing commercial building at 301 High Street. Following board's direction, the applicant and their acoustical and consultant met with the neighbors on High Street regarding their concerns about noise and shade. The applicant provided shade drawings that showed the new roof enclosure would not create additional shadow impact on that residence on High Street. Those shade drawings were also provided to the board. Because the new rooftop enclosures would not create additional shade impacts, the applicant is requesting that the city approve the project as originally proposed. The applicant has also met with a neighbor via phone conference with the noise consultant to explain what the noise impacts are. The neighbor has provided staff with an email indicating that she is no longer opposed to the project. However, staff has included a condition of approval requiring a testing of the equipment prior to occupancy to ensure compliance, and the neighbor was also informed that the neighbor can also work with code enforcement in the future if they decide that there may be some violation of the noise ordinance. Additionally, as shown in the site plan provided at places, the applicant has modified the site plan to include one more parking space to be located in front of the trash equipment room. Signage will be provided to ensure the space is cleared during times when garbage will be picked up. Accordingly, staff recommends that the board recommend approval of the project as originally proposed. Following staff's report, the applicant is also available to speak with the board. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Hayes, are you going to make the presentation? Okay, you'll have 10 minutes.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Lippert, members of the board. I think we can keep this pretty quick. We did put a real brief presentation together. We met with JV and his wife, Vicky. They came to our office at least once, maybe twice, and we had a couple phone conversations with them to work out the shadow study. Their concern was, and I'm not sure if this is in your packet.
It is.
It is, okay. So we did a shadow study showing the site plan with the roof screen and without the roof screen, and the neighbor's garden where she has her prized heirloom tomatoes, and she's promised me one, is back here. And this is, so we took you through the year. Looks like this is probably an equinox. I can't read that, but at 5 o'clock, it is shadowed back here, but it makes no difference whether the roof screen is on the building or not. The shadow is the same. So after she saw these, this is June, excuse me, and then there's September, so the other equinox, and then in the winter time, and it doesn't make a difference in the top. So she was satisfied that her garden would be fine, and her sort of sunlight would be protected and not further compromised with the encroachment. And then we did speak with her and the acoustical consultant, with JV and his wife a couple times, and then with the acoustical consultant, and they became comfortable, even with this condition, about the acoustical performance of the project. So hopefully that answers your question. We did add the parking space, and that was really added coming out of the council meeting on the 21st, and because we were using the 200 square foot one-time exemption. And I know that, and so that would be right here. So this, I'm sorry, that was before. And this was sort of a zone that we were going to try to put extra bike parking, but coming out of the council meeting, it looks like a car is preferred. So we're going to put a car there, and hopefully we can find other places for a bike rack. But we do have bike racks on the back of the building here, as previously proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is the time for the public hearing. Any members of the public that wish to speak specifically to this item may do so at this time. Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and I will return to the board for comments and questions. We'll begin with Board Member Guyer.
Based on the fact that the only real way to change the shadow study would be literally to take a chunk of the existing building out, and the neighbor has lived with that condition and appears to be happy with the arrangement. I think it's a better solution to have the screen where it is. It's more functional, and so I'm okay the way it is, like it's presented.
Great. Board Member Malone Pritchard.
I'm fully in support of the location of the roof screen as presented. There was one thing we discussed at the last meeting which had to do with whether or not the windows could be obscured. So I'm interested whether other board members are interested in conditioning the project to not allow obscuring windows in the future. And the last thing is I think we could strengthen the DEE findings, just finding number 3, in light of the fact that so much discussion went on with the neighbor, and it's been proved that the location of the roof screen will not create additional shadows. I would add that to finding number 3. It just strengthens the fact that it is not detrimental or injurious to other sites in the vicinity.
Would you like to make a motion in that case?
Yes, I would move that we recommend approval of the project with the additional condition that the windows shall not be obscured, and with one modification to DEE finding number 3.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Can I chime in? I have one question for staff.
Sure.
So this is a new issue that I just considered. So in the conditions of approval, the city arborists have selected the street trees for both streets, and so I think the one's on Everett, or like a red horse chestnut street tree, and they know more than I do about trees, but that particular tree is not recommended for uses on the street because it's poisonous and it drops very large chestnuts. I mean, it's considered okay for parks and stuff where it's in a planted area, but not along parking or sidewalk areas. It also requires moist soil, well-drained soil, which seems not typical in Palo Alto. So I was wondering if maybe that could come back to you or to that subcommittee, whichever way, just to hear their thoughts about the tree selection.
Board Member Liu, do you have any other comments or questions on it?
No.
Okay, with that, we'll take action. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to item number 3, 429 University, request by Hayes Group on behalf of Kipling Post LP for preliminary architectural review of a proposal for a new 4-story mixed-use building with ground floor retail, 2 floors of office, and 1 floor of residential, zone district CDCGFP. And this is a preliminary review, so we will not be taking action on this today. We'll only be commenting. So if staff would please introduce the project.
Thank you. The applicant for 429 University is requesting preliminary comments regarding the proposal to replace an existing one-story building with a new four-story mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor, office on the second floor, one residential unit on the third floor, and shared commercial and residential use on the fourth floor with a large terrace. The project is also providing 2 levels of underground parking. Staff requests board feedback on the proposed design. We do have some concerns about the design and its relationship to the adjacent uses and the narrow Kipling Street. Staff has heard from various members of the public regarding concerns specifically about the size of the building and its impact on Kipling, particularly safety. Staff has provided at places several emails that we've received from the public, and a lot of them have been concerned specifically about Kipling Street. Following staff's report, the applicant does have a presentation. This concludes staff's report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hayes, will you be making the presentation on this? Okay. This is a prelim, so you'll have 10 minutes on this.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects. I'm also joined this morning by my client, Elizabeth Wong, and her family. So the site, as you know, is the corner of Kipling and University Avenue here in the red. It is surrounded by CDC properties. On University Avenue, they're CDC ground floor restricted properties. Here you have the subject property. This is the Varsity Theater, which is a very tall, greater than 50-foot structure. Historic buildings here in front are generally one story with mezzanines. The President's Hotel located here. The views, it's the site where currently Design Within Reach is located. The corner view here is a close-up of the corner. The building is not historic, has no historic significance. It's been modified too many times over the course of history. And then this is a view looking south or east, I guess, down University Avenue. The streetscape, it is a one-story block. You have the old Apple store across the street here, and the building on the corner is 4 stories. The project would be the front view here. We're pulling across the horizontal lines of the ground floor, and then the horizontal lines here of the balconies at the second floor. But we're trying to get a larger presence on University Avenue because I really think that the corridor needs to be strengthened with the street edges, and this is one way to do that. This is the view on Kipling, where we're actually trying to break the building down a little bit more. We're showing you our preferred option in these views. Then there's the alley, then there's some open space, then there's where Alto's Street Productions used to be, and I think this is Zabibo restaurant, and then this is a parking lot. So not a whole lot of development along the rest of Kipling, but this is the Kipling view. The program is to create a modern 24,000 square foot office and residential condominium mixed-use building, responding to the site and the context. We're trying to embrace some sustainable design practices as the project moves forward, and obviously enhance the living and working experience for those occupants of the building and the neighbors surrounding the building and users of University Avenue. The circulation diagram, obviously University has the most traffic. Kipling is subordinate to that, and probably subordinate to Waverly in that it doesn't go through University Avenue, but intersects with it. There is an alley behind the building that is essentially a service alley, and this is the end of the alley here. It doesn't extend beyond the former Apple Store site. So this is the terminus at Kipling. It's a one-way alley from Waverly in this direction, and so we'd be proposing that all of the service and utility functions, as well as access to the parking, would be from that service alley. It's not advancing. There we go. Pedestrian circulation primarily on the Kipling and University facades. There is a crosswalk here at University on both sides, so there's plenty of pedestrian activity that could occur down this edge, and then certainly along University Avenue. This shows lane 30 access to the parking garage off of the alley. And of course, upon exiting, you would exit out to Kipling and then either go right or left on Kipling. This is sort of a facade massing diagram. The buildings are all built out along University Avenue. These are 1-story, denoted sort of like this, 4-story building, a little bit taller, story and a half here. And then we have the 6-story President's Hotel there, 3-story 499 University AT&T building, I think, there. And then the rest of this is 1-story again here. And then further down Kipling, these are residences that have some historic significance, but they are occupied primarily by offices or personal services types of uses. We'd like to play up the sort of the retail corner of the site here. This is fairly prominent corner as you come into the downtown. The blue area would essentially be the commercial space, mostly retail and kind of wrapping the site, and then the part that's shaded in red here is really the utility and driveway access and trash facilities, that sort of thing, off of the alley. So it's a pretty logical diagram. And then the solar exposure here, we face pretty much not due, but southeast. So it's something to be considered, certainly, but not harsh exposure. And then this side along Kipling is sort of ideal exposure for daylight. A couple plan options that we've looked at among many others, but this is where it sort of has ended up. Our selected option is here, our preferred option, where we show a main retail entrance in the center of the building that would then allow this to be retail window display, which we felt was stronger than an entrance at that location. So that was preferred. Our entry to the upper second floor office space, there's a small office space on the 4th floor, but the building's primarily 2 stories of commercial. Then the 3rd floor is a residence, but that entrance would all be back here off of Kipling, so downplayed, not interfering with the exposure from University Avenue, which was a priority. And so that's indicated here in the green, and then the blue is the utilitarian sort of trash and recycling facilities off the alley. And then this indicates where the driveway ramp would go down. The difference between these two diagrams is essentially how the corner is handled. Some imagery that we were looking at. Again, we're thinking of concrete and glass and metal panel probably, although we're still formulating ideas on that. We liked some of the refinement of the detail in these buildings. Certainly we don't have a building that tall. This is the Jazz Museum in San Francisco. That is a nicely detailed concrete building that is 3 stories. Here's a detail of sort of a kind of a portal, and if you look at our drawing, we have sort of this idea of these frames that start to define the upper floors and the upper roof terrace, and we see the upper roof terrace as being a very lively spot for office functions related to the office space on that 4th floor, as well as the residential will have access to the roof as well. 2 levels of underground parking worked out pretty well. No lifts in this project. They are all individual parking spaces, so easy to get in and out of, but 2 levels underground. And then these are the plans of the 1st floor here. 2nd floor, pretty much open office space with the core pushed against the side where we really can't have any windows, and then windows on the other 3 sides. Upper roof, I'm sorry, I skipped the residential floor here with terrace that fronts onto University Avenue, as well as outdoor space that kind of wraps the side of the back of the building here on the alley, and then the side of the building there. This is the small office space on the 4th floor. This is all rooftop of the 3rd floor, so the building is sort of between a 3-story and 4-story building. This was option B, and this is where we were playing with kind of these layered forms, lots of glass, a concrete kind of very disciplined sort of stacking of the program. This is the residential floor set back, and then the roof terrace above. This wasn't as successful, and so it's not our preferred option. So I'll move through it quickly. But some things I did like. I liked the way we were handling these windows that kind of popped out of the side to give the building some texture at that level. But the option we focused on is this, where we have, again, the layering. The glass is not as tall on the first floor, and then the upper levels sort of program are kind of captured within this kind of blown apart box. The idea is to create, this is 50 feet, create that definition along University Avenue, then have it break down as it moves down Kipling. You can see the railings on the upper floor. This is glass railing on the residential floor with the balconies here. And then this is the office space on the second floor, and retail with canopies on the ground floor that wrap also around to the entrance on Kipling. And then this becomes this rhythm ends sort of at the entrance to the upper floors and the residential unit at the back. And that concludes. And materials, I could see these as metal panels. The concrete, I think, would be a little bit too heavy, but that's still, going through those options, and would like to have your feedback on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I will open the public hearing. This is the time when members of the public may speak to this item. If you would, fill out a speaker card and hand it to one of the staff members. And the first speaker I have is Jivakil. Did I pronounce that correctly? Thank you. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. I'm not sure I know what to say. Yesterday, a lady came by with a little card saying, "Go tomorrow and protest." And I don't see a big crowd here. So I think what she was talking about was parking, the problem with parking. I do have a few random thoughts which I will say. I'm a small retail owner. I've been in town since '74. And I've had a hand-to-mouth business, somehow struggled along and seen big changes in the city. Mixed-use buildings are shown to be very beneficial to small business. I'm not particularly talking about this project, which sounds actually very nice. It's great to have residential also in a shopping area, in downtown area. I guess as I was thinking here about what to say, what perhaps I want to say is that it's simply a matter of supply and demand. The town is moving in a certain direction. There are certain large players. And I can't say that it's against small business, but it is therefore extremely difficult for small business to survive. This is an architectural review board. I'm merely requesting that you are very cognizant of the appearance and the type of crowd that downtown businesses draws. Parking, of course, is a problem, and there's a lot of bad driving, dangerous way of driving in search of parking spaces. Monsters like Cheesecake Factory, I don't know who approved that design, but it's not conducive to high-end retail like myself. I remember Pennington, I don't know if you do, they had suggested that University Avenue be a walkway, a mall type of area instead of driving. So all I'm requesting is that the board keep these sort of things in mind when large buildings overshadow small, small historic places. It doesn't look very good. It's not very good for small business. I'm not necessarily against this building. I like what this building is suggesting. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have John Hanna, followed by Gerson Beers. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning, John Hanna, 525 University Avenue. The former speaker came up to register a protest. She wasn't quite sure why, but what she actually did was to make a very supportive pitch for the project, making the same comments that I would have made, that bringing residential downtown is a good idea, something that's long overdue. We're starting to see more of it now, and that it's good for merchants to have people living downtown. So those are both, I think, very positive elements of this project. The third is that parking has been such a huge issue throughout the town, and we all know there's a severe parking problem. And here we have a building that's actually providing 2 spaces more than the minimum required, following the very complicated existing rules that we have for parking. So without any comment on the architecture, I'm glad to see that she liked the building. I think it looks nice too, but I think that's up to you. But I think the important things about this project and why it should move forward are because it brings a mixed-use residential use downtown, and it is parked. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gerson Burrs, is that correct?
Burrs, very good.
And that'll be followed by David Kleiman.
So my name is Gerson Burrs. I'm a resident, 3218 Lewis Road. And I'd like to speak first to the architecture of the project and then the parking issue, because that's very important to everyone who lives in Palo Alto and how we interact with the downtown and parking on a daily basis, and in sensitivity to those people who work downtown as well. So on an architectural basis, I really like this building. I think it's an improvement to what's there right now. And it's got a very interesting sensitivity at the pedestrian level.
Could I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Could you move over and speak into the microphone?
Sure.
Great.
So I think it has a very interesting approach to pedestrians. I think it works on a human scale and on a street scale as it is designed currently. I really like the idea of bringing people to live on University as well. It does a couple things. One, it puts people where they spend money, so there's fewer people in cars. The other thing is, if this was a completely office building, we'd have a lot more traffic, a lot more parking issue. You actually reduce the density of parking by having somebody live in portions of this building, whereas you have 4 cars versus 40 cars in an office situation. So I think it's a really smart development that way. And lastly, I'd like to talk about the parking issue, in that this building provides all the parking necessary to execute the building, plus a little bit more. You can't expect, every development to solve the entire problem of parking downtown, but this certainly does not add to it, and in some small way takes away from what could potentially be a full office building with 40 additional parking problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David Kleiman, and if there are any other members of the public wishing to speak to this item, please fill out a speaker card.
Good morning, board members. I wanted to, also voice my opinion that I live downtown. I'm vastly in favor of buildings that are slightly more dense than some of those that are presently on University. I think the city is growing. I think this is evidence of that. Certainly, there's no parking issue with this one, which is great. I am in favor, as you know, of trying to have these buildings be fully parked so that we can take a little bit of attention off of buildings in the downtown area from a parking perspective. I like the architecture. I'm sure you're more capable hands. You'll probably have your own comments on that, so I won't opine as to that. But I like the idea of slightly higher density buildings in the downtown area. I go for a walk with my wife every night, and it's great to see. It will be great to see more buildings like this, especially ones that bring residents onto University, which is fairly rare at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the last call. Any other members of the public wishing to speak may do so at this time. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and return to the board for comments and questions. We'll begin with Board Member Malone Pritchard.
So thank you for bringing this forward as a preliminary. It's nice to see a couple of different options and get the chance to discuss them. I think the site planning and the functionality of the building are very well thought out. Particularly, we're glad to see the parking lot access from that alley. And I think it's an important thing to point out for people who are concerned about traffic on Kipling that that alley is one way, so all of the in access will be from Waverly Street. Normally we don't take public comment after the public hearing has been closed. So I believe that option A does hold better together than option B. The layering doesn't feel all that successful to me in option B. The rib framework you're proposing in both options, however, does create an apparent height that seems a bit more than necessary. Because you are the first building on the block to not be one story, I think you're going to have to tone down the apparent height a little bit. So this is similar to another building we saw recently that was creating an apparent height with a rib structure. One of the reasons I'm saying that is we do have to review this for compatibility with the neighborhood, and again, this is the only taller building on that block. I like what you're doing with pulling back the fourth floor far away from University, so it essentially is a three-story building at University. It's just that front rib that I'm objecting to.
Okay.
I had a question about the datum, but you showed that in your presentation. That's really all I've got. I think generally speaking, it's a well thought out project. Just need to work on that massing.
Great, thank you.
Board Member Guyer.
You want just questions or
Comments?
comments? Okay.
Questions, comments?
I have a start with a question. On the fourth floor, I'm a little confused. It says residential, but it looks like a 400 or 500 square foot kitchen, which doesn't really seem residential to me, and a very large or relatively large toilet facility for, again, a very small office space. So to me, it being maybe as cynical as I am, this is a perfect venue for putting either a bar or restaurant up there sometime in the future once it's been built, where all the elements of it are already there. So maybe you can quell my cynicism.
The direction that we have from the client in the program right now, Mr. Guyer, is that the kitchen that is up there will be for the residents, for them to entertain on the terrace, because they really don't have large outdoor space at the third floor. It's just a 6 or 8 foot deep balcony along University Avenue. There is office space up there, and I can't say that the office won't have functions out on the terrace. It's not intended to have a restaurant or a nightclub at this point. I think we'll, after we hear your comments and we've received the staff report, there were some questions they had about it as well, and so we'll need to circle back with our client to really fine-tune, I think, what the use will be up there. I mean, if there's going to be a nightclub up there, obviously we need to do a lot more than what we're showing right now in terms of infrastructure to support it. So that's not the intent with the information that I had to get here before you today. But it may change, and if it does, then we'll have to accommodate other kinds of infrastructure. But that terrace will be used for both office space users as well as the residents, and it would have to be, monitored controlled at some point.
Okay. So as far as the design, this building is the same, sort of the same problem, I think, or maybe that's too harsh a word for it, is that when you're the first building in an area to go from 1-story to 4-story, usually you try and tone it down as much as you can. This building is the sort of idea where it basically is almost a 3-story building that architecturally is made to look like a 4-story building. I think you're going exactly in the opposite of what I think my fellow board member has mentioned, that I think you'd be a lot better off getting rid of or changing the design so from at least University and Kipling it looks like a 3-story building. Again, just because of shadow and everything else. The other problem I have is that this building has sort of the perfect symmetry, mirror image concept that I think it works or can work in the middle of a block, but I think if you're on the corner, you want to take advantage of that. And I mean, they're two different streets, and why not address them differently rather than this is something where this building is designed as though, well, it could fit on the corner, it could fit in the middle of the block, anywhere, and I think that makes it too generic. The building itself, to me, if you look at it from this elevation, you see some of the ins and outs and variation, but the reality of it is no one is ever going to see it like this. A person's going to see it standing either on Kipling or standing on University Avenue and looking up. And to me, if that's the case, even this far back, it's going to be tough to see. To me, it looks like a big rectangular box. And it really has no human scale to it at all. And one of the things that I think University Avenue has going for it is the human scale down at the shopping level. And in this particular building, I understand maybe where you were going for based on some of the examples you showed us, but I don't think that particular type of design works here. I mean, you've got basically an enormous glass facade on both elevations of Kipling and University, and there's no human scale or no, I don't know, it doesn't have a resident, or I should say a walking scale to it, or it just, this could be, in downtown, or I should say in a shopping center somewhere, where you've got an enormous storefront of glass, and hopefully the store inside is doing something creative. If not, it could be a very...
That's the idea, I think, is that, the building becomes sort of subservient on that ground floor to the retail use on the inside.
I guess maybe, you're the design professional, the person putting their displays in is not, and I'd rather have the character and the quality of life aspect of it be created in the architecture, not in what they put in the window, where you hope that the person wasn't having a bad day when they did the window dressing that week.
Site planning issues?
Site planning is fine. I mean, I could see where people, might have a problem with if all of this is going, the parking is coming off the alley, that there may be an issue with the alley, but obviously it's the only logical solution that the entry and exit into the building from a parking standpoint happens there. So that's sort of a foregone conclusion. As far as the, like I said, the only thing I have the question is on the fourth floor. I mean, it is, we're talking, it's nice to bring residential down into the the urban core. But let's face it, what we're talking about is one unit on the third floor. So it's not like, and I suspect maybe the owner is going to live there or something. So this is not, wow, let's bring 10 units down. So I mean, that's why I was a little leery about the use upstairs. I'm just, I don't really understand that. And I think that's the main thing. I think it's too bulky for what, being the first one in the block. If it had, 2 or 3 buildings right next to it that were 4 stories or 3.5 stories, that's one thing, but it doesn't. I think that's it for now.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to reopen the public hearing. We had a minor clerical snafu here. There is one more speaker card, Elizabeth L. Moon. If you would like to speak, you'll have 3 minutes.
And my apologies for speaking earlier out of sync. I was not quite in tune this morning with the process. I want to address 2 things. I haven't really heard how many retail spaces are being created on that bottom floor. It sounds like it's going to be one large one, which would displace 3 or 4 small businesses that we have now. Certainly those small businesses aren't going to be able to afford to remain in this space when they rebuild it. And one of the things that's wonderful about Palo Alto, at least historically, is the character of these small businesses. And we're starting to get more and more of these giant retail chains that you can get at any other town. I mean, I go up to Berkeley and I look and I go on 4th Street. These are the same shops we've had in Palo Alto. Everywhere you go, they're cookie cutter towns, and they're not unique anymore. And we're going to lose some of that uniqueness if we go with a space that's a giant retail that nobody can take. And I wanted to address Claire's comment that the entry to the parking would be through Waverly and then out on Kipling, as alleviating Kipling. If you have ever driven down that alley, you know that that's a lovely notion, but it is not realistic. I've done it or attempted on numerous occasions and not even been able to enter the alley. It is a service alley, as was pointed out, and there are trucks loading from the florist. There are even shoe trucks for people that are a couple blocks away. There's always service trucks parking in that alleyway to load and unload. And there's many times you just can't even get down there to enter that parking area. So I think that it's a lovely fantasy, but if you try and do it, you will just be tearing your hair out. It's not a realistic approach to the parking scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will close the public hearing again. We'll return to Board Member Liu.
So thank you, Ken, for the presentation. I have a couple of questions for you. On the site planning, I think generally I'm okay with the Part T of the building. Regarding the alley, I know we've talked about like some alley conditions on some of your other projects. Like there's one on like California Avenue where there's like a narrow one-way alley and whatever. And so it'd be great going forward, maybe in the next presentation, if there is some sort of consensus with the neighboring businesses that use the alley and how it works, just so that we understand how all the service aspects happen back there, because we don't know this that well in detail. I mean, it seems like I went to the site yesterday and looked at it, and it does seem like at the time that I went, there was nothing happening there. Just there were some employees having a cigarette in the back, and that was it.
There's other parking facilities off the alley.
But I realized that that's a lot of times deliveries are made earlier in the day to businesses. But yeah, mostly because this is only 20 feet wide, so that's the major concern. Also, there are a couple of really big pepper trees, and it seems to me if you're going down 2 stories underground that all the trees are going to be removed.
And Dave Doctor is celebrating. He wants all those trees removed.
Oh, he does?
Yeah,
okay.
So we are replanting all of that portion of Kipling.
Okay. And so, yeah, so look forward to seeing what you have there for landscaping. I had a question for staff, so on Ken's project on California Avenue, I mean, I think that's maybe different zoning, but there was an issue with like the 20-foot rear setback. And then we didn't really know where it came from, and then we did a DEE. And is that just different zoning for California Avenue than downtown?
It is different zoning. The Cal Lab has that 20 setback, but University does not.
Okay, so okay, great, thank you. And then Ken, on the, you were showing some sketches of different concepts for the first floor plan, like with different, maybe with like demising walls or something. And I was wondering, what is is there a particular retail type of tenant envisioned for this?
There's no determination on who the retail tenant is going to be at this point, and the idea is that the ground floor could be subdivided into multiple tenants, or it could function as one large tenant, and there's no decision on that yet. Our instructions are to make it somewhat flexible, so I could see where two tenants could easily use this, and we two sets of doors, and they divide it down the center. That's probably the most likely.
Okay, so can I just generally on my comment on the first floor is that let me back up 1 second. Is that we have some comments about concerns about the building being too tall for the narrow Kipling Street, and that was my first thought too before I went to visit the site, and so I was concerned about that. It seems to me you're doing an important move, which is having glass on the two sides.
Correct.
And I think that's really important. If we see like the Perry Baguette thing where they added more glass on the side street, it really does help the side streets a lot, making those more glassy and more transparent. So generally, I'm in support of that move.
So where the red line is here, that's intended to be the glass.
Yeah. So I think that's a very important move, and to try to minimize the blank walls on the side streets. I have concerns, though, about just the general design of your building. Is that it seems like it's be very hard to subdivide this if you have different tenants that want to have a very different aesthetic, and to try to fit that all in your architectural composition seems very difficult to me. You've got
for the retail tenant. You're saying?
I don't know I don't know if you have a thought in particular in mind, but it seemed to me that it was very difficult. You've got glass going up to the underside of the structure, and so some tenants might want to drop the ceiling down or whatnot, or they may want to have their own sort of facade elements. And it seems to me that those are going to really fight with the
Well, our job doesn't necessarily stop with the outside of the building, and so I would anticipate being involved on what happens on the inside. And so, to the extent that we can influence that, we would want to keep it open. I do see that you'd have two different size retail tenants. Obviously, anything on this side would be a smaller tenant, and then this could be a larger tenant on that side that could have two entrances.
Yeah, and I think that but I think generally, I mean, I think what we're seeing, like at Stanford Shopping Center, where the tenants really want to have a very distinct facade, and so I think that and it seems like I've seen a couple of your buildings that really have minimalist awnings, very few places for signage. Just on this particular building, it'd be hard for a tenant to add some sort of like another canopy or something, right? I mean, so I would like to see sort of some strategies for
signage and
on just tenant improvements, if it's like how you would accommodate that, because you're proposing something very minimalist.
Yeah, everything behind the glass line.
And you're proposing a very minimalist break between the first floor and the second floor, and that's something we don't normally see here. Or if we see it, it's really all one tenant from.
So when we come back, we'll have examples.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please. And I think the other thing too, which is I think on the minds of a lot of people in town, is just the character. I mean, it seems like my first reaction to this was that it was sort of out of character with the Burge Clark, Varsity Theater types of buildings. On my second look, when I'm looking at that on your side of University Avenue, there are actually a fair bit of modern or contemporary buildings. So on looking at the site on your side of the street, I could see an argument for something more modern than on the President the varsity theater side. But again, I think that detail, character is really important. That is one of the most attractive things when you walk around downtown Palo Alto is just the uniqueness of each building, and that every building has really beautiful details. Let's say like the old Apple store has really nice terracotta corners and stuff. They're very beautiful design elements, and I'm not seeing it yet in yours, but I realize this is just a preliminary. But I also know that you're very modernist and minimalist, and I do find that lacking in this scheme. And I think that's all that I have.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, and then one last question on the unit, on the residential unit on the 3rd floor.
Yes.
You have like one bedroom facing the side property line, internal side property line, which doesn't seem so great to me. I mean,
this one here, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have 6,000 square feet, and you have like ample square footage in this thing. It's a huge penthouse. It seems to me that that's not so desirable for that. I mean, given what you're building, I'm not crazy about all of the
there's four
windows and
4 bedrooms.
Yeah. I mean, I'm under the assumption that something may be built next door that's also taller someday.
Perhaps we're on the 3rd floor. I don't know what the climate of development is going to be like here in Palo Alto.
It's changing very quickly.
It's changing very quickly.
I think it's already changed.
So I'm not sure where that area would come from to be able to increase the height of the building next door. So anyway, yeah, the thought is that's open, and for the foreseeable future, that bedroom would have a spectacular view of the Western Hills.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question for staff. Sorry, I should ask this first. So the council has been making lots of changes, and so how does this project fit in with with our current scheme of parking rules and regulations and whatnot?
Right. Yes. So following council hearing and clarification on what was approved, staff did look at all the changes and did analyze. So primarily, the major change would be the bonus of the 200 square feet. And so the same thing was made for the previous project where it is required to be parked. So that was accounted for in the analysis. And the project is relying on TDRs for additional square footage, and that those TDRs are still allowed without having to be provided with parking.
Elena, may I just? So there are 3,850 square feet of TDRs that are being transferred to this site that we are parking. So there's a total of 8,250, and 5,000 we're going to be unparked. 3,850 are parked, and we've been asked to reduce that by 600 and something square feet. So we'll maintain 3,850 square feet of TDRs that'll be parked in the garage below on site, and it'll be about 4,400 of TDR that will be unparked. When we come back, that's where we'll be.
Thank you for that. I saw some clarifications in the staff report. I didn't quite understand. I didn't connect the numbers to what's in the plans, but I will look at that at the next hearing. I think that's all that I have. But I think I generally would, if the majority of the board wants to downsize the front portal, I think I would probably go along with that.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Ken, first of all, I want to thank you for coming forward with a prelim on this. This is a particularly important project and a particularly important site. So coming forward at the prelim level is really important in order to get our feedback. A lot of my comments are going to be similar to what you've heard from my colleagues here. Probably the first one is with regard to the height on the front of the building. I'm in agreement with Board Member Malone Pritchard. I think it creates a false sense of height there when there really isn't maybe the need for that height element. Earlier today during the public comments. Somebody had talked about Cheesecake Factory, and I was on the architectural review board when that project had moved forward, and I was one of the dissenting votes, and I actually didn't like the idea of having false height for that store, that property, that there was no reason to have a double height space when in fact there was no necessity to have more floor area. I thought that it was creating more massing without utility. And so I voted against that along with another board member at the time. So from what you've described here are very similar to the comments that we've made on the property over on Waverly, and I think that it really needs to be addressed. That's sort of the elephant. What you're trying to do here also, I mean, it's a very Corbusian project. I mean, it really is wonderful in terms of what you're trying to convey. I think it's much more difficult to execute it in a way that is acceptable to the community and something that people will like. In going over the general thing, I think that there are missed opportunities here. You've described how you're going to divide the space down the middle and make it into maybe 2 tenants. Could be 3 tenants. It could even be 1 tenant, 1 big tenant. But what I think you're missing here is that this is on a corner. And the opportunity here is that corner really needs to be reinforced. I think the opportunity is to have a retail space that you can really enter right there on the corner and enter into 2 spaces, one along Kipling and one along the University Avenue. Did you look at that at all? You know, similar to, you know,
Yeah, I mean, that's right there. Yeah. We looked at those options and reviewed them with the client, and it was, you know, essentially these were the 2 prototype plans where something could happen at the corner or something happened sort of mid-facade, and the direction that we chose to go was mid-facade. I'm hearing that, you know, perhaps the corner should start to inform for this particular site the building. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we did look at that, but once we got to that point, looked at options, it was decided to go with the mid-facade entrance, and then the 2 options that you see, A and B, are based on the mid-facade, so we didn't bring any of the other options.
Right. And then the other opportunity is that, you know, here you've created this artificial height along University Avenue, but because of the residential quality of Kipling, you know, in some ways, maybe that is the right approach, to have all the massing on University Avenue, have all the height there, and have the building terrace back as you get into towards the residential end of the project along Kipling, and that way the terraces or the garden spaces, for the office as well as the residents could in fact be on the back side of the building. Did you look at that at all?
So no, we didn't. Under that scenario, because we were just the preconception about the terrace was it wants to be overlooking University Avenue. So we had not considered that. But to consider that, we then would need to move real building to the front. And so what's the board's, that then means it'd be 4 stories at the front. It wouldn't be a false 4th floor, but it would be a real 4th floor. And of course, the stepping down may help modulate that or mitigate that impact as you come around Kipling. But I'm getting a sense that, from the neighborhood as well, that 3 floors might make more sense. But I mean, I'm happy to study what that might be, but when we come back next time, we want to have a direction that we have support on. So just be interesting to hear what others would think of that.
I mean, you have
you have
the Actel building, which is almost directly across the street from it.
Yeah.
And that's one
4 stories.
Is 4 stories, but it does something very similar where they've carved out little areas on the back side of the building for people to have little terraces and windows and things like that. And
But on University, it's 4 floors, right?
correct.
And I think it's 1 story on either side.
Correct. And because of the the way the grid works out and everything, that building isn't necessarily going to create a shadow. It's not going to create a shadow towards the south. It's going to create a shadow towards the north. So therefore, the massing could be closer to the south side, south corner, and then it could step back, so it creates less shadow as you get away from, get into the residential neighborhood. Any thoughts on that?
Only we hadn't studied that, so that may be something that the client would want to look at. But I think that they would be interested in understanding if we did take real mass and move it towards the front, and we have 4 floors there. Does that, is that something that the ARB can, be comfortable with, provided we address the other issues about human scale and some of the austerity concerns?
What I'm concerned about is not the 4 stories. What I'm concerned about is the false or the massing of 4 stories without the utility of 4 stories. That's where my concern lies. So I personally don't have a problem with having a 4-story building on University Avenue. I have a problem with having simulated 4 stories that are not in fact 4 stories. So that's my big concern. What about, did you look in terms of your residential unit, maybe doing something along the lines of a duplex, something that was,
It was originally a duplex, which starts to give you some explanation why the form that we have is 2. But then it was decided that they really wanted 1 larger unit.
Okay. Did you look at having a 2-story unit?
No.
Having a single residence, but it's 2 stories, and then on the other side of the wall might be the commercial down at the 3rd floor.
That could be very interesting too.
Yeah,
no, we've not looked at that.
Yeah, I think that there's an opportunity there that could create some more excitement there. Now, just one other thing I wanted to mention here is that I think that the 2 facades that you've created along University and Kipling are far more exciting than the backside of the building.
We haven't even gone to the backside.
I know.
Yeah.
You always seem to do that.
I never do that. So at this preliminary stage, I really wanted feedback on where we're headed so far, and I know I can make the back work if we had support for where we're headed right now. I didn't want to spend more time on the back of the building at this point, given wanting the feedback on this first.
I'll take the Steve Jobs approach, which is that the back side is as important as the front side.
Oh, you're talking to the,
Okay.
I know that.
So those are my main comments with regard to the project. I'm really glad that you came forward at this early stage, and I think you will be able to incorporate a lot of our comments.
Is it possible to get feedback from the others that were somewhat adamant about a 4-story building?
Sure.
So it's not that I wouldn't support a 4-story building here. I don't support a 4-story wall at the street. So if you had a 4th story that was pulled back somewhat from the street, I may support that. It's just that 4-story mass.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Guyer?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not against a 4-story. I think a lot of it, I'd have to see what it looks like, but it's the same sort of thing that Lee indicated, that, why have something look like a 4th story where you're not really making it or any use or taking any use out of it.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Liu?
So I think that we have, conceptually, we have a lot of 3- and 4-story buildings on corners downtown, and the downtown plan is generally to have larger buildings on the corner, smaller buildings in the middle.
Right.
And then I think that, so I think generally I can go there, and I think the consideration is that Kipling is narrower, it's got narrower sidewalks, this narrower street, and so then I think that there's some consideration should be given to that.
Okay.
To scale it down, or to, I think part of it is also that the building is looking blocky, and so it seems to me that maybe, and at this time we're not seeing any of the texture or anything on the building, so it's looking kind of, so it looks really big and blocky, and but it seems like that could be, that can be mitigated by really good design. And it seems like Kipling is Kipling's a really tough. It's a really tough street in my mind because it's so small. There's like not enough critical mass to make it like a really great.
I mean, it changes
side street.
completely after you get behind the buildings that are on University Avenue. Kipling's a residential block almost that's commercially zoned.
Yeah, it's a really tough one, and I think the right move is what you're doing with the ground floor, is having more windows on there, and so I think it's maybe we have a break between the old turn of the century houses and this, and then you have like Zabibos, which is something kind of in between. So I think that's just what it is, and then and I'm actually not. I think some of the board members are sort of opposed to having like a false front on this, and that actually isn't really what bothers me. It's really just the idea that if it appears to overwhelm the neighboring buildings is, I think, my concern.
I really liked this image.
Like the portals.
Yeah. But maybe there's another way to incorporate that.
Also, I would just one last consider, is that I really do think that the emphasis should be generally on the ground floor, not up on the roof top. There are other architects who've done things way up on the cornices and stuff, and it just seems ill-placed if there isn't enough, when there isn't enough consideration at the street level. There's a building on Lytton, which I think is just really puts everything up there and then really not anything down at the street level. I'm really mostly concerned about the ground floor experience.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate your comments, and they're always good.
Board Member Guyer?
Sorry. I just had one minor item. We've had various conversations about emphasizing the corner, and you mentioned that you had the doors there. When I say emphasizing the corner, I don't just mean put the door there. I mean, if you leave it exactly the way it is and put the door there, that's not emphasizing the corner.
Got
okay,
it.
I just wanted to...
Got it. But I'm not interested in a tower either.
I just want to make one other follow-up comment here. I would encourage you to take a look at what we've recently approved for the corner of High and Hamilton. It has a lot of the same issues. It's ground floor.
135, a Chops building?
Yeah. And it also brings into sort of the aesthetic, where one of the character-defining features is something very similar to the portals that you're trying to achieve here. It does it in a different way, but I would certainly recommend you take a look at it because it is the similar mix. It's a similar height. It's a similar...
Same orientation.
Same orientation, similar configuration, similar corner, okay? And it also has an alleyway problem as well. It's not a drive-through alleyway, but it is a pedestrian alleyway issue. So...
All right, well, thank you.
And underground parking to boot.
Right, yeah.
So,
Right,
okay?
thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we will finish the... Okay, so with that, we will go to subcommittee. And so what I've done is I've asked Alex to join the subcommittee as my replacement. And Randy will continue on, and I'll do the subcommittee today in Randy's stead. And then at the beginning of the year, we will have Board Member Pop come off the subcommittee and have a replacement then. Board Member business and announcements.
Yes, just to alert the board that there was going to be the 240 Hamilton appeal going on the 12th. That is getting bumped off and put in December. I believe it's December 9th, but I need to check that, and we'll alert you to that so we can have a representative at that meeting. And also just to alert you to the fact that 636 Waverly has been appealed. So that will be set for council as well.
Okay.
It's a trend officially.
Okay. Epidemic. Thank you. With that, I want to talk a little bit about the downtown, the height and sidewalk issues that we're dealing with as subcommittees, so to speak, or adjunct committees. And we really need to get moving on that. And so there's some information that board members have requested that we need to get in order for us to be able to move forward. And I'd like to get that agendized for the next meeting so that we can discuss it properly.
So you would like that on November 21st as a public hearing item?
Yeah, if we could put it on so that we're able to discuss it.
Okay.
Get it on the agenda. Any other board member business or announcements? I have one other item there tonight. We have our board recognition at the Lucy Stern at 6 o'clock, is it?
I believe it's at 7.
Okay. And so I think we're expected to be there.
Unfortunately, I have a class until 7 in Oakland, but I'll be there late.
Okay, great. And so reports from officials. We have some good news.
Do we have some good news? We have a good news, and that our new director started this last week. That would be my official good news. Yeah.
Great. Can you tell us anything about
Oh, she's a lovely individual. I'm happy to have her on board and at the helm. So hopefully we will be having her come and say hello to y'all. Maybe the next meeting we can see if we can orchestrate an appearance. I know we have a meeting scheduled for next week, I believe, with the chair and myself, and just to touch base. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we will adjourn and the subcommittee will meet. Thank you.